We just discussed, what shifting right is. So why should you shift right? Why can't you get all of your testing done prior to production? Again, that may not be that mysterious a question to people who are engaged in it, because there's lots of answers. There's just time constraints. But I think the main reason is because there is no other place like production, just like there's no place like home, to bring up another meme. There's no place like production for a number of reasons. One is scale. And I often reflect on this because I started my career in software development slightly before sort of the advent of the internet, at least as an application deployment platform. And before that, I think it was harder to have applications that operated at the scale that we do today. In the past, before the internet was an open platform for deployment, it was hard to get thousands, hundreds of thousands, certainly millions of people using a single version of your application. But today, a relatively small SaaS application could easily have thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of customers. And that scale produces data and transactions that are very hard to reproduce in any environment prior to your production. You can't afford to build out something that is going to have the capacity to scale like your production environment. And you're frankly going to have a hard time producing the data that would simulate it. Your production environment is also going to be necessarily more complex than any other environment you're likely to build or that is reasonable to build. It's going to be where you have your CDNs deployed, your load balancers, all your potential network connections to partner systems. It's where everything comes together. And it's unlikely you're going to see everything that you could prior to that environment. So what we're going to talk about today is how to get from that, how to learn from that, how to test there, and how to learn from it. It's also the environment that is the most complete. It's going to have all your latest functionality. Again, it's going to be all your latest connectivity. It's going to be the place that you have tools in place for systems monitoring. For your marketing system may have scripts deployed to observe customer behaviors that you don't have or that don't really receive much use in your pre-production environments. And those scripts can affect the way your application runs. And that's an important thing to remember. So we shift right because production is distinct. We also have in our modern environments, continuous deployment into the production, continuous delivery. In many organizations, you may be releasing new code throughout the day, multiple times a day. Certainly, we are far away from when we used to deliver, maybe only at the end of sprints or even longer durations. And in order to support that, rapid delivery of functions, we've got to be looking at it as it hits the most complex and most elaborate parts of our environment. But one thing I'll pull out that I think is really particularly compelling about shift right testing, and that is that it can encourage collaboration among groups that aren't always looking in the same place. And those are your developers, your quality engineers or quality professionals, and your operations professionals. Your developers are often looking at their development system. Maybe it's their laptop, maybe it's another development environment that they have access to, and that's where we get the it works on my system sort of cynical comment. QA is looking into test environments, and maybe as they shift right, they're looking into production. Operations is really always focused on production, and if you can start to develop conversations among those groups about how the application behaves in the place where it really matters, I think that's really powerful and something to look forward to and keep in mind. Another reason that shifting your testing to the right is valuable is because ultimately that is where value is created. And you can see that in this set of responses to a survey that was part of Capgemini's continuous testing report from last year, where they asked, how do you measure the effectiveness of your continuous testing process? And the top two survey results are by looking at production data and from user feedback and the adoption of new functionality. Those are the things that deliver value. Further down the list, you'll see things that we often look at as engineers, quality professionals, things like requirements coverage, automation, code coverage. Those are all important, but ultimately they are there to support those value delivery features in production. Similarly, from that same report, there's another survey to ask what continuous testing practices are you putting in place? And the one that is, at the top is testing in production. So, I think this would be even bigger if we were defining testing in production in the somewhat pejorative sense of just jumping into production because I didn't test in earlier environments. I think what this is really talking about is what we're talking about in terms of shifting right. And that is taking tests that we've already executed, that we've already built, and not just automated tests, but also exploratory manual tests, and applying them to production so that we can see how our applications behave in that richest of environments. And so we can learn from that.